Hey there, Ralph Covert here. Welcome to my songwriting class. I want to talk about rhyming some more today. I want to do kind of an in-depth look at some different rhyme schemes, how we can manipulate rhyme schemes within our songs to create interest, create variation, and have some more tools at your disposal. So, as I talked about in my overview rhyming class, rhyming it originally came to be, I think, as a species, as a part of a mnemonic device, as a way of remembering words, remembering information. Before there was written, the keeping of information, a way to store it, there was an oral tradition where important information was passed down, whether they be stories or rules of life, through poetry and through the elders memorizing words. And they would use the meter, the rhythm of the words, and the rhyming to help them remember it. So in a lot of ways, we've evolved as a species to have the parts of our brains that do rhythm and rhyming are kind of built into our DNA. So we're actually programmed to be songwriters, if you think about it that way. Now, within different rhyming schemes, a rhyming scheme would be the structure of the way the lines rhyme. And kind of the standard notation would be calling the, AA would be the first two line, a rhyming couplet. BB would be, so A line, A, B, B, kind of using letters that are the same to represent lines that have the same rhyme. So your most basic rhyme scheme is the one I just described, kind of an A, B, B, C, C, D, D rhyme scheme, where each line rhymes with the next, creating a rhyming couplet. And that's, so when you get to the end of the first line, your brain already has a clue, kind of a reminder what the last word of the next line is going to be. So it kind of helps you keep that straight. And the same thing for the listener. It plays into their expectation, their comfort. So when they hear a rhyme, when they hear a word at the end of a line, their expectation is that it's going to be a word that sounds the same. So it kind of creates familiarity for the listener. And kind of an example of an AABB song of mine, there's many, many of them, but this is kind of a fun one. A song called Somewhere in Heaven Tonight. And this is capo. For those of you who don't know, capo allows me to move up and down the neck of a guitar, so I can use a particular chording structure at a different, but have a different key. So in this case, this song is very much kind of written with kind of a folk blues structure, so kind of follows that traditional AABB rhyme scheme. Although the interesting thing about it is it's called Somewhere in Heaven Tonight, so that it's written as a refrain, which means every stanza of the song ends with the same line. So in this case, Somewhere in Heaven Tonight, so that's the sixth line. It's kind of a 6-bar verse. The fifth line every time is going to rhyme with tonight. So bite tonight, fight tonight, kite tonight, uptight tonight, light tonight. So you hear that in this first verse. And I had a lot of fun with kind of just narrative storytelling in this song. But you hear the first verse, how the rhymes go. The first two lines rhyme, and then the next two lines rhyme. So. Somewhere in heaven, John Lennon is holding court. His words fall like tangerines and roll across the floor. Juice drips in the mouth and ears of all who are there waiting, as he shares his daily litany, the mistakes that Paul is making. Like an itchy rash, he scratches and he bites. Somewhere in heaven tonight. I'll do another verse, you can hear what I mean. Somewhere in heaven, Napoleon is waging war, leading a sacred army, trying to even up the score. He strikes against the demons, and he strikes against the dead, and he strikes against the voices that keep sounding in his head. And he calls upon the Lord to help his fight, somewhere in heaven tonight. and on from there. So you'll notice with that song a couple things. One, as I mentioned, A, A, B, B, and then the C rhyme of the end of the refrain. But you may also notice those A and B lines, the first 4 lines, are longer. So in a lot of ways, you could think of it as a 5-line verse where the last line has an internal rhyme. So sometimes lines can rhyme at the end, but another option you have is to do rhymes that are in the middle. And with the turnaround of the way the turnaround happens at the end with the shorter lines, it feels natural. If you didn't have that rhyme, it wouldn't set up that final payoff. You'd be expecting, if the fifth line was, let's say, I'm just going to mess up the words of the first verse. So instead of saying like an itchy rash he scratches and he bites somewhere in heaven tonight, I'll get rid of that bites line, and you'll see how it won't feel right. So somewhere in heaven, John Lennon is holding court. His words fall like tangerines and roll across the floor. The juice drips in the mouth and ears of all who are there waiting as he shares his daily litany of the mistakes that Paul is making. Like an itchy rash he scratches and he hops somewhere in heaven tonight. Verses, like an itchy rash he scratches and he bites somewhere in heaven tonight. So the rhyme there sets up the expectation, allows that shorter line to make sense, and makes it kind of flow more naturally to the listener's ear. So one of the variations you can make off your starter AABB line is an ABAB rhyme. So the first line is going to not rhyme with the second line. It's going to rhyme with the third line, and so forth. The second line is going to rhyme with the fourth line. I did a little example in my overview video, something about there once was a little brown cat who was wearing a silly red hat, would be my AA rhyme. Now, your expectation is on that second line rhyming with the first. If you change it up and make it AB rhyme, then when you get to the end of that second line, the listener's ear is going to be expecting to pay off that first rhyme. And so it'll cause a little bit of cognitive dissonance, a little bit of unexpected feeling in the mind of the listener. So there once was a little brown cat who was wearing a silly red scarf. He sat down and put on a hat, paying off that rhyme to A, B, A, and just like a dog went arf, arf. I think the poem I made up before was kind of like that. So when you get to that second line, you're expecting cat to rhyme with something, and when scarf comes in, you kind of go, huh? But then there's a delayed reaction in the third line when hat comes in, and then it all makes sense at the end when you get to arf, rhyming with scarf. Masterpiece of poetry, as I know you believe that was, but you get the idea. So sometimes with your AB lines, another common variation of that is to have the third line not rhyme with the first. Really, once you get to that, you can play around with the rhyme schemes. There could be A, B, C, B, so that the first line, you're not locked into rhyming it with that first line, as long as you have that second line paying off the fourth. But I got kind of discombobulated there because I'm realizing there's another song of mine, Small Gray Rain, that I did it the opposite. The first and third lines rhyme, and the second and fourth lines don't. The chorus of that song, and it's interesting, I think both the verses and the choruses of that song do the same thing. You stay in your room, I stay in my world. Somehow there always seems to be a door between us. You turn too soon, I take it too far. We lose control and seem to tumble from each other. So you've got room and soon, and the same thing happens in the chorus. It's Sunday morning, morning, I'm watching you sleep. And without warning, all the things we fight about slip away like small gray rain. So you've got morning and warning. The A lines rhyme, but the B's don't. And they're all choices, they're all options that you can do. Not rhyming is as legitimate a choice as rhyming. Not every line needs to rhyme. But you're kind of, once you start thinking of it as the structure, looking at the word at the end, then it becomes a tool you can work with. A great trick with finding rhymes is instead of writing the first line and then writing the second line to match it. If you're having trouble with a particular rhyme, write the second line first. So set your rhyming word at the end of the second line, and then go back and fit in a word in the first line that sets up that rhyme. The reason I suggest that is your listener has a great ability to hear a contrived rhyme. You know something when it's forced and when it's a bad rhyme, but they will almost always overlook it if it's the setup rhyme. They'll assume an awkward word in the first line. They won't even hear it as awkward because it's not rhyming. And then when the natural sounding word comes in the second line, they will have forgotten that the first word was maybe not the perfect word, but the second word will pay it off, and their brain will just assume it's perfect. So if you're having trouble with a rhyming word, do the second line first and then work backwards to the first line. It's a great way to do a rhyming couplet. My song, Amen Alex Chilton Is Sleeping, off of the Welcome to Deadsville album, does some interesting things with rhymings that I wanted to look at kind of as we're expanding upon this idea of using different rhyme schemes. Because you can do A, B, B, C, C rhymes, you can do A, B rhymes, you can do A, B, C, B rhymes, you can do A, B, B, A rhyme. That's kind of a fun one that's used in some Elizabethan sonnet poetry, where the two middle lines rhyme, but then you come back and pay off that first line at the end. I've done that in a few songs, and it's really great because there's a real sense of satisfaction for your listener when you pay off that rhyme after waiting for 3 more lines to get there. But what I did in Amen Alex Chilton Is Sleeping is I've kind of fell into a rhyme scheme where I did an A rhyme, and then had a B, and then did another A, and then paid off the B at the end. So it's a 6-line verse. So it goes A, B, and then B, or no, A, B, C, B, I guess would be how you'd look at it. Where the first 2 lines are a rhyming couplet, and the 4th and 5th lines are a rhyming couplet, but the 3rd line and the 6th line create a rhyme scheme that kind of puts a big hug on the whole verse. And then I'll look at the chorus of that song too. So for instance, the first verse, you hear a song, it soothes your soul. You're pulled into the church of rock and roll. So we've got soul and rock and roll. The music seems to have the power to save you. The words you write, the melody, conspire to lift you up and somehow set you free. So melody and free. And then the last line of that first verse, it calls you out to share all that it gave you. So let me sing that verse for you. And I think you'll hear how that works. You hear a song, it soothes your soul. You're pulled into the church of rock and roll, and the music seems to have the power to save you. The heard you hear the melody conspire to lift you up and somehow set you free. And it calls you out to share all that it gave you. So you can kind of see how the rhyme scheme of that song carries the verses forward. It's not as predictable as that AABB rhyme would be, but it's still, when you get to that last line, it just kind of makes sense because it flows out of, you've heard that it's been set up with that rhyming pattern. So then when it comes back in, it feels like a payoff. On the verses of this song, or on the chorus, I mean, it's an example of the that A, B, C, B rhyme scheme I told you about, where the second line and the fourth line rhyme, but the first and the third line don't rhyme. So let me do the chorus. In this particular first chorus, now, I did something interesting on this song. The first line of every chorus is different. Normally on a chorus, the lyrics remain the same. On a chorus, the lyrics and the melody and the chords remain the same each time that chorus comes back. I played a variation of that on this particular song. Each chorus has a different first line, and you'll see why, because I'm name-checking different artists. And so it felt appropriate to have the list extend across the song. In the very first verse here, the first chorus, I mean, there's an internal rhyme that you'll hear that is, I don't do that in the later choruses, but it's kind of interesting. You'll hear the internal rhyme in the first line of this song. But let me play the first chorus. While Nirvana and the Beatles and Madonna take a bow, and the guitars in the bars are gently weeping. There's another internal rhyme there, huh? The winners and the wannabes are ghostly as their MP3s. Amen. Alex Chilton is sleeping. Holy mackerel, there's a whole bunch of interior rhymes I didn't even realize. Okay, so there's more going on here than I thought. They've got the second and fourth lines rhyme. So weeping and sleeping. But then I've got Nirvana, Madonna. I've got the guitars in the bars are weeping. Then I've got the winners and the wannabes are ghostly as their MP3s. So there's an internal rhyme in the third line. And then the fourth line pays off that sleeping rhyme from the second line of weeping. So there's a whole lot going on there. How about that? More than I realized. And the bridge of this is very pure. Okay, this one is an A, B, C, B rhyme. The first and third lines don't rhyme. The second and fourth do. They tell you to quit, and you know you never will. Even when the amp is silent, there's music you can feel. So you got a rhyme between will and feel. It's a near rhyme, either an approximate rhyme or a professional rhyme, I call them. But certainly the first and third line, quit and silent. There's no way that rhymes. So I'll play the song for you here, and you can kind of hear the pieces as they fall out. Remember, in the verses, it's an A, A, B, C, C, B rhyme scheme, a 6-line rhyme scheme where there's couplets kind of with the third and sixth line rhyming. Something else I do in this song is each verse starts with a little unrhyming, unattributed, offhand pickup line. So in the first verse, here's how it goes. Next line, next thing you know. So that is an extra little bonus line that's not rhyming or tied into anything. Choruses, you'll hear how I played with a bunch of different stuff. And again, the overarching idea I'm trying to say about rhyme schemes is that it's by looking at it and understanding what your rhyme schemes are, you can then make choices, starting with your kind of foundation base of your couplet, rhyming couplet of A, A, B, B, and then playing with variations off that, And also remembering that not rhyming is perfectly fine, and not every line has to rhyme, and the rhymes don't have to fall in any specific place. By using rhymes, you're creating familiarity with your listener. You're kind of leading your listener to expect a certain word to fall there, and playing with their expectation, and that holds their interest and keeps them engaged. And probably just as rhythm and rhyming were mnemonic structures to help village elders and poets to remember their work before they had writing, it may well help you remember your songs better when you're performing them live. So it can be a memory device for you too. Anyway, here's a song about rock and roll called Amen. Alex Chilton Is Sleeping. And listen for the rhymes inside of it. Enjoy. Happy writing. Here's how it goes. You hear a song, it soothes your soul, and you're pulled into the church of rock and roll. And the music seems to have the power to save you. The words you hear, the melody, conspire to lift you up and somehow set you free. And it calls you out to share all that it gave you. Next thing you know, you find some friends, an old guitar, and it's your destiny that you will be a star. Though all the while you know it's a deception, you pay the price, you give it all, and you fly high knowing that it's certain you will fall. Though you tell yourself that you are the exception, while Nirvana and the Beatles and Madonna take a bow, and the guitars in the bars are gently weeping. The winners and the wannabes all paid a price for what was free. Amen. Alex Chilton is sleeping. Here's what I mean. You buy a van, you hit the road, you shoot a video and play some shitty shows, and the doorman says you're really sure to make it. You count your likes, you count your streams, though they're ephemeral as your deepest dreams, as if your heart is only real if you can break it. While Bono and Bob Dylan and Oasis take a bow, and the guitars in the bars are gently weeping. The winners and the wannabes are ghostly as their MP3s. Amen. Alex Chilton is sleeping. Amen. Alex Chilton is sleeping. Tell you to quit, and you know you never will. Even when the amp is silent, there's music you can feel. In the Gospel of Paul Westerberg, we heard about the man from the holy town of Memphis, Tennessee, baptized by obscurity. He suffered just like you and me. Amen. Alex Chilton is sleeping. While Taylor Swift and Elton John and Bowie take a bow, and the guitars in the bars are gently weeping. a price for what was free. Amen. Alex Chilton is sleeping. On the road to fame and fortune, he broke down in his van. Amen. Alex Chilton is sleeping. Amen.